So you keep wanting, hoping, praying the toxic person will change. That is so common and something I hear so often. And I hear the words, gosh, life would be so amazing if they could just communicate differently, if they could just do the right thing, if they could just get the help they need, if they could just use kind words, if they could just stop getting so angry, if they could just stop cheating, if they could just stop choosing your sister over you, if they could just stop whatever it is. And I heard an incredible analogy this week that once again had nothing to do with toxic relationships. And people say, oh my gosh, Sarah, like your work is so different. Why? And it's because I take all these weird things that have nothing to do with toxic relationships and use it to explain things to you. So I heard this example. It was actually about a sales call structure type thing. So it had nothing to do with toxic relationships, but I thought it was a perfect analogy for wishing, hoping, and praying that someone will change. And the guy said, stop throwing the baseball to people who don't have arms. Stop throwing the baseball to people who don't have arms. And in this analogy, arms is empathy. Arms is them wanting to change. Arms is them wanting to do the right thing. Arms is them wanting to get help. Arms is wanting them to do anything other than you doing the work of the relationship and them avoiding responsibility, avoiding change. But you have probably been throwing a baseball to someone who doesn't have arms for a long, long time, hoping they catch the ball. In co-parenting situations, it sounds like, oh my gosh, life would just be so easy, if he would just, give me the toys I was supposed to get this weekend so my son didn't cry in the bed when it was time to go to bed, right? Something, it may look like something like that. Or with a toxic family member, life would be so great if, my sister would just take turns in family holidays or whatever else it is, or with a coworker, gosh, life would be so great if they could just, do their end of the project without me having to do it. With a toxic friend, life would be so great if they could just stop emotionally vomiting on me all the time or respect my boundaries. And your life can be great. But the strategy you need for creating the life you want is not throwing a baseball to someone who doesn't have arms and hoping they catch the ball. And you try to communicate in a different way, and you try to get mad, and then you try to pout, and then you try to beg, and then you try to hope, and then you try to pray, and then you try to whatever it is, and wait it out and communicate differently, and then you go to therapy or you do coaching or you do something to change you to try to improve the relationship. And in reality, all you're doing is hoping that they'll grow arms. And you keep throwing that baseball, and you keep throwing that baseball, and you keep throwing that baseball. And I want you to think about a house and I'm going to switch into another analogy, but I want you to think about a house, and there's a party in the backyard. And the toxic person that you're hoping will change is the owner of the front door. And so there's a party in the backyard, and you walk up to the driveway, you walk up to the front porch, and you knock on the front door, hoping the toxic person will open the door. But they don't have arms. Remember? They don't have arms. Or they choose not to have arms. They choose not to grow arms. And so you bang your head on the front door, then you beg and you please, oh please, I know, I'll guess the secret password. I'll, do housework for you when I get in the house. Oh please, no. Or then you switch to, how dare you don't let me, how dare you do this? Don't you know a good husband, a good mother, a good coworker would open the door for me? I'm just trying to get to the backyard. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not doing anything wrong. I just want to get to the backyard. And if you want to get to the backyard, the easiest, most efficient, safest, best way is to go around the house. Go around the house. Don't try to go through the house. Don't try to go through the toxic person. go around the house, because you keep thinking happiness will be found, peace will be found when they grow arms to catch the ball or open the door. And that gives them all the life, all the power. They have all the power, because your life happiness, what you do, is dependent on whether or not they decide to catch the ball or open the door, whether or not they decide to grow arms. And growing arms, growing up, is a heck of a lot of work. You keep thinking, that's one of the reasons we research narcissism to death, right? Or hope to get them to therapy, because you think, okay, once they don't know what they're doing. So once they realize what they're doing and they realize it's hurting me, they'll stop. But growing arms is a lot of work. If you're used to getting your way, and then all of a sudden someone asks you to not get your way all the time and not be selfish and take on the work of the relationship, it's a lot of work to grow arms. It's a lot of growing up, it's a lot of maturity, it's a lot of unselfishness. And very, very, very rarely do they ever want to do the work. If ever. Very, very, very rarely do they want to do the work, because if they wanted to change, think about all the fights you've had. Think about all the conversations you've had. Think about all the times you begged. If they wanted to change, they would have. They are grown-ups. These are grown-ups we're talking about. We live in a world of self-growth and self-help. Do they really not know how to get help or know where to get help? Or are they trying to use that, whether or not they're going to therapy or pretending they're getting help, to avoid change and make you the problem? And you take ownership for everything, and then you think you're not good enough, and the reason you don't think you're good enough is because you do keep failing. But you're throwing a baseball to someone with no arms. You're begging someone with no arms to open the house to let you in, to get to your happy life, which is in the backyard. So of course you feel like you're not good enough, because it's not working. And I have a great principle in my life, kind of one of my, like, Sarah's 10 Commandments, and it is, if it's not working, stop doing it. And for far too many years in my life, I kept throwing that baseball, thinking if I use a different, use the curveball this time, or threw it a little higher, or threw it a little lower, threw it a little more gently, or, said something a little nicer before I threw the ball, that they would catch it. But they didn't catch it because they didn't have arms. They didn't want to grow arms. They wanted to get me. They wanted to watch how hard I would try to throw that ball. Because to you, relationship is connection. But to other people, relationship, they have that empty hole with no arms and empty hole. And relationship to them is watching you do the work. So that's why you felt like you could never get it right, because you couldn't. Because the whole point was watching you do the work. So if you stopped working and you found rest, they no longer felt like the relationship was okay. They no longer felt like they were okay. So the finish line was always moving. There was always a reason you threw the ball the wrong way, and a reason they shouldn't open the door. Stop blaming yourself for throwing the ball wrong, but also recognize that you have been throwing the ball to someone with no arms, and if it's not working, stop doing it. Hope you have a great day.